Welcome to the Creator's Crypt, where creatives from a wide range of genres will share secrets, drop hacks, and give us just a little bit of insight into their industry. We'll be talking about indie toy design and toy creation with this week's guest, Steve Forde. Steve is the founder of GoHero and Let's Be Onyx. Say that 10 times fast. Steve, welcome to the Creator's Crypt. Yeah, so why don't you tell me a little bit about GoHero?
Yeah, so GoHero started about a little over 20 years ago, unofficially, 2001, I think. And it was born out of just my love for Godzilla and giant robots and pop culture. And I'm an 80s kid, so I love all those great action stories designed for... I have two older brothers, so, I really got to appreciate older stuff too, but really 80s, right? They really made content directed exactly into my brain. And so GoHero is really a manifestation of those things in a collectibles form. I actually I ran an agency and still run an agency, a creative agency with my wife. And back then I was doing a lot of Flash design, if you remember Flash animation before, I think Apple killed it. And I made this original character, and people really responded to it. I made this an animation and a character and all this interactive stuff, and people were like, that's amazing. And I thought, wow, I should make a comic book. And then it dawned on me, I love toys. And I'll bet there's 10,000 people making a comic book and maybe 5 people making toys. So I started down that path. Mm-hmm. It was right at a time when designer toys were starting to happen. Mm-hmm. And so I met up with a few different folks. I met up with Super 7 when they were just guys being enthusiastic and putting a really beautiful magazine together and authentically, back when it was Japanese pop culture, but Japanese toy culture. Mm-hmm. So I met with those guys and some other folks and started to learn. I think we all were learning together. The toy industry existed at a certain scale, and indie punk rock exists at this other scale. And so I sort of stepped into it with ideas that could live in both worlds, and from there made a giant robot toy that people really liked. I mean, it had a really great reception. Yeah,
that's fantastic. So for a lot of us, when it comes to toy making, we kind of get into it at a young age where either you are restricted by your allowance or you're restricted by, other financial means that you couldn't get some of the things that you wanted. You either were left wanting or you learned how to make it yourself. Was that the same for you as a kid?
Yeah, well, I'll say when it comes from, I've always loved toys. Toys to me are like there's this manifestation of affection. I love a show and I'm inspired by this character and heroes, and I could do a whole deep dive Fordian thing where I lay on my couch and I'll sell you why I love heroes and the search for the ultimate hero and my daddy relationships, and I could do all that. That's probably a different podcast, but I really loved just all these hero and villain characters and what that meant and the juxtaposition of them. And so I used to explore that, and just my mom who worked 3 jobs found the way, and I was pretty scrappy, so I did a lot of little wheeling and dealing to mow a couple of lawns and take out the trash and do certain things. And I would hang out at Katy City and Toys R Us and just be around these things were just really informative to stuff I love. So toys were just my affection in my hand. I loved it, and it manifested in this thing. And what's fun is was it realistic? Sometimes, did it match? Not really. Sometimes, most times it didn't. It was always this extrapolation and sort of a charming expression of this thing. So it was a lot of just good feelings that I then wanted to do my own world building.
Yeah. And, I remember that too. When I was a kid, the Transformers were a big thing. And so if you wanted a Transformer, you were going to pay some big ass money for it. But, me being who I was and didn't have that money, I was creating them out of paper, and then it was later out of wood. And so one way or another, I got my Transformer. And you're right, it didn't look exactly like it, but I feel like in some ways it was almost better because I learned a lot from the build process, and I would refine it each time. But
You sure did. Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
something about making it yourself, and the pride of doing that. But it
Yeah.
wouldn't have come unless I was like in that, I don't want to say poverty childhood, but pretty damn close. But
No. Yeah. Let me backtrack a little bit. We had no money.
yeah, that's what
Like
I'm
we grew
saying.
up with like we weren't those people. Yeah. We did. It was like I did a lot of wheeling and dealing with it. I had a buddy who was a single child, and he had all the stuff. Like he had it all, and I would sit there and go like, how do like what can I do here? What do you? And it was a lot. And I borrowed things. So, but also I did love now, as you're sparking the memory, which is I used to get shoe boxes and all this stuff and create these like dioramas and play sets, and then carve out like the trap doors
Yeah,
and had a lot of fun. And then I would build stories where somehow He-Man with his his anatomy could also somehow fight with a GI Joe guy. I don't know. I mean, in my head, it was like I knew there was something broken there,
yeah.
but I tried. But yeah. I had a huge affection for all that stuff, and just like monsters and sci-fi, and obviously Star Wars
Oh yeah.
um, and Transformers were huge. Here's a fun story. When I went to go license Buck Rogers, here's a fun fact, and probably a guy I'll try to connect you with to get on your program. Um,
Awesome.
I cold call the guy that owns Buck Rogers, right? This is how I connected with Gil, and Gil and I became friends. Gil Gerard, the quintessential Buck Rogers. Um, so I call him up. I'm like, "Are you the guy? Are you the guy that owns Buck Rogers?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm the grandson of the guy who created Buck Rogers, and we were the rights holders, me and my family." And I said, "Great, man! I'd love to reissue that ray gun from the Foo Fighters album, the one from the 1930s." He's like, "That's a great idea." And I said, I think I'd like to do a 1/6 scale figure of the original 1920s. I don't think anyone's ever done it, and everybody owes, like, all of
Oh
Sci-Fi
yeah.
Visual owes their credit to this character. Yeah. So, yeah, his name's Flint Dilly, and I'm like, "Yeah, man, Flint Dilly, Flint Dilly. What is this Dilly name?" I'm like scratching my head, and like 2 weeks earlier, I had watched the GI Joe. I bought the GI Joe box set and rewatched it, and then I started watching the commentary, and there's Flint Dilly in the commentary, who was a writer on GI Joe and
Oh
Transformers
wow.
and Inhumanoids, and this guy's like in the room when they're like, "Let's kill Optimus Prime." Like that's this guy, and I
Wow.
had no idea. So the second phone call, which the first phone call went really well, the second phone call, I'm like, "Nope," like Mr. Dilly, like all of a sudden I sound like
Yeah.
Shaggy. And I'm like, "Hey man, I think I should have been more nervous the first time I talked to you. But like, can I just skip that part and just let's be friends?" And he was like, "Yeah, let's just, whatever. And yeah, so he's a good friend, but like, yeah, all that stuff was, and I later we've really become friends. We have projects together now. And I told him, I don't know, this is going to sound weird, but you incepted me as a kid. Like your work that you were like, "Yeah, I'm banging this out and cashing checks," is like in my head is important.
Yeah.
Like I'm sitting there going, it's really important to get these 5 characters together, and they have to interact. And this guy was like figured out a formula. He was cranking it out, having a good time. 80s,
Wow.
the 80s. And I'm sitting here as a kid going, this is what heroes are all about.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway,
The,
weird connections. Weird.
I
Connections.
know it's weird, and I didn't even realize when I had originally contacted you until I think it was just before the email. I was like, holy shit. We have like a similar connection with Gil, and we were talking earlier about when I met Gil for the first time. I was geeking out pretty hard, and I was sitting in the table next to him signing autographs at Dragon Con, and he was right on the other side of the curtain. And I was just like, I remember it was the first convention that my wife and daughter went with me. And so and I'm telling my wife, I'm like, I'm gonna lose it. Like, I'm this guy is like a big deal to me. And she's like, control yourself, control yourself. Do you just want to let it all just like hang out? And I'm like, I don't know. I will try to. I'll man up. And the second Gil said hello, it was all over. Yeah,
Yeah,
it
yeah,
was
yeah.
all over. That lasted about
Yeah,
10 minutes.
he's great, and yeah, yeah, yeah. Gil. Listen, he's fast friends,
Oh
and
yeah.
he's every bit the man's man, and then he's a real guy if he lets you
Mm-hmm.
in. So we've been friends over the years, but yeah, there was this moment where I'm like, this is the guy, like this is the guy, and like who am I? But like I get over that pretty quickly, and most of the time I actually don't nerd out. The only time I nerded out, I really like got like verklempt, like I'm talking to Ray Harryhausen at San Diego Con,
Oh wow.
and Ray's at his booth, and so I'm boothed, and I see Ray over here in the corner, and no one's talking to him. Not in the corner. He had a corner booth,
Mm-hmm.
but he's by himself, and no one's talking to him. I'm like, this isn't right. This is the guy who, like, in his basement was defining mythology for like multiple generations and
Exactly.
inventing techniques and inventing special effects. Right, Ray, you have to
Oh
know,
yeah.
like Ray freaking Harryhausen. So I go to meet with Ray, and I'm like, all right, what am I going to say? Like, hi, Mr. Harryhausen. I just want to thank you for your stuff. And my buddy comes up. I don't want to out his name, but he's a great designer, a fantastic guy. And he goes, Ray, and he just gets right in front of me and Ray, who am I? I'm a skeleton. I'm one of your skeletons. And like ruins this like moment with my mentor. And this guy's just totally he just comes to Comic-Con and gets drunk and hangs out. That's what he does. So he just disrupts my like
Oh my god.
my one moment where I was actually going, well, that's over.
No shit.
Like it was 30. I had 30 seconds. I could have had like an hour with Ray, but like totally ruined. Yeah.
I think that a lot of people in today's world don't really have the appreciation for guys like Ray Harryhausen, because one of my first Comic Cons, I can't remember where it was, but Tim Lawrence was sitting at his booth all by himself. And Tim created like, do you remember like Ghostbusters 2 with the I can't remember what the brothers were flying around in the electric chairs, in the courtroom and stuff. He built
Oh yeah,
all
yeah,
that
yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
I mean, he had worked on like I think the Gremlins and all kinds of, but Tim was like a legend, and he's sitting by himself, and so
yeah.
that's how I ended up becoming friends
Yeah,
with
it's
him.
wrong. Yeah, these guys are they're inventors. I mean, they created things, and what's wild is they're just really amazing problem solvers, and you can't control how the product they made is received.
Yeah.
Like I don't even view it from that perspective. I just view it what kind of decisions they had to make in that moment to create that thing. But just coming back to one of the best worst conventions I ever went to. Was in Ohio, and I guess whatever happened, the guy planned this convention, and he invited all these celebrities, so like Peter Mayhew and Julie Newmar, and I'm going to blank on a bunch of
Oh
names,
my god.
but Adam West and all these people are in the room, and there were as many vendors as there were people, like attenders.
Yeah.
So the guy I think took a bath. Really great
Uh,
guy, but I think another event showed up the same weekend. So, but the upside was, I got to hang out with all these guys the entire weekend. We just were shooting the breeze. I'm sitting here, goofing off with Adam West for hours. Julie Newmar was sort of sitting up on tables doing things with her legs. It was a weird scene, but like, but everything else was great. And I got to hang out like like for hours. Like nobody was happy, but like you're trying to make the best of it. And I got to know some just great guys in the comics industry, in the movie actors, and just film and TV folks that you wouldn't have otherwise. You were all sort of locked in this like a snowstorm in a bunker together for a few days, and it was like, well, let's try not to kill each other.
and it's a lot like that. A lot of people like, because there's at every con there's whether no matter how popular it is, there's always that lull, and there's just nobody around, and some of the celebrities will leave their tables, but those that stick around, you
Yeah,
start to have a good time with. And do you remember a movie called
yeah.
Trolls 2? It was horrific, right?
Of course.
Horrific. So it's
Yes, it
actually,
was
yeah,
terrible.
it's
Yes.
known as the best worst movie ever
Nilbog,
made.
is that Nilbog?
Yeah, I mean, oh my god, it was so bad.
Is that where they're saying Nilbog, Nilbog? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And they had like, it was shot up in, I think, Park City, Utah, and it was just really really bad. The dad's like, I'm so hungry, I have to cinch my belt one extra loop just to keep the stomach pains from hurting. And it was, and so the queen of the trolls was Deborah Reed. And Deborah Reed happened to be at this convention, and
Oh,
I kind of geeked out a little bit because, you know, it's a really bad movie, but, you know, Deborah is just a trip. And the things that she came over and did to this werewolf that I had at my booth, you know, at my table, was just
oh my.
horrific. There are photos. It's like, oh my god, I'm never going to be able to sell this thing to anybody now, you know. And that was just her personality.
Or a huge Deborah Reed fan. You
Yeah,
never know. There's
exactly.
always the other. The other side of the coin is like, I need that. I need that. I was just talking to one of my partners. He's like, I want to. Well, we want to rent something, and we might just maybe we should buy it and return it when we're done at the convention. I'm like, well, you know, you think that's a bad thing, but it's the one you like.
Yeah,
He's a pretty famous guy, so it's like it's the one you use. So when you return it, you just write a certificate of authenticity, like this is the one I got to use. So like you should be paying me on the back end.
you know, like that the
Boner,
television
yeah.
show I was on was a Jim Henson Creature Shop Challenge, and we had this episode with Donald Faison, and I had this minotaur up on the
Mm-hmm.
wall, and he was interacting with it, where he just starts making out, like French
Mm-hmm.
kissing my minotaur. And I was just like, I was horrified and elated all at the same time, because that minotaur has Donald Faison DNA in it, and I could sell it to anybody now, you know. I mean,
I, one would hope that adds value. I think there's that's questionable. You know, Deborah Reed, I understand. You know, but there's always somebody out
there's
there.
always
There's somebody
somebody.
out there. You know, or just disinfectant,
Or
or
just
just like this was officially disinfected. That also can work. Yeah.
oh
Either
my
way.
god.
Either way.
Yeah. So hey, let me ask you this. So how does it work at GoHero? Do you guys like employ like 3D printers and things like Blender to create prototypes, or is it something that you guys sculpt in clay, or how do you guys get started with a project that you're trying to develop?
Yeah, great question. It has we've done a little of everything over time. I mean, 20 years. I mean, we predate digital, so it was all hand sculpted. So I've gotten to work with some amazing sculptors for various projects, toys, and um, I'll name some names just for fun. Just Don Lanning, if you know who
Mm-hmm.
Don Lanning is. Brian Wade, great effects guy. Jerry Macaluso, if you know Jerry. Just so different guys.
Yeah.
Gabriel Marquez, who the late Gabriel Marquez, just amazing talent. Um, so we used to do a lot of wax work in clay, and we do all the very very handmade stuff. I am an okay sculptor. I'm a better 2D artist than I am in the 3D world. And what it means is when we start getting into 1/6 scale work,
Mm-hmm.
the demand went from like that's cool that you got near it, and that's fun that you interpreted it too. This has to be a hyper high definition, realistic
Yeah.
model of what it is that actor looks like. So, like the bird in this, it's just night and day. There's almost zero fun, just to be honest. There's no like Migo works today because it's nostalgic,
Mm-hmm.
but the tolerance for interpretation
Mm.
is far lower now when it comes to 1/6 scale and the demand of it. So what happened is, this is all to answer. I would work with really talented artists, and one of my the gentleman I'm working with now, who's doing a lot of the high definition work, is Corey Hanzo, who's a phenomenal portrait sculptor for 1/6 scale in
Mm-hmm.
particular. So he and I have teamed up on some things, and it's just an amazing process. So he's using Blender, but I've got other folks that I've worked with. Adrian Melton is a guy who when we're doing parts or figuring stuff out. It's sort of a pre-engineering type of development where the engineer and the real fine-tuning I need the factory to do, but we're trying to solve a bunch of technical problems here. General functionality, getting things as close to ready for factory. So the process will change. I personally do all the 2D, all the packaging art, all the design concept. I do all that kind of stuff. And now, in recent years, really in the last couple of years, I'm really working with a team where we're sharing the burden.
Mm-hmm.
We're sharing the creative on a lot of original IP that we've been developing. And so that's been a new experience for me to have people who I go, all right, I need you to design this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I've worked with people where you're doing a model, so we're all going, we want this to be accurate. That's a very different question than let's create something new together. Yeah. Is like improv. It's improv jazz, so totally different process. It's the technical is the afterthought. It's more like, why is this right for this goal we're trying to accomplish, this design or this character or that kind of thing.
So let's talk about the steps of this. Is kind of like a question I was going to ask you later on, but since we're in the general vicinity,
sure.
if you're working on something that is your IP, what's it look like, the prototyping process, like from start to finish, before you ship it off to, say, a manufacturer? What's that look like?
Yeah, so I'm doing what are the closest I can do to a technical drawing. Like I'm doing a spec sheet,
mm-hmm.
and in that spec sheet, I'm defining all these rules. And the rules are not just why is this going to be cool, but when I do this, what are the variations I'm going to need if I do 5 versions of this? And it's very much it's really elaborate because I'm trying to create something that I'm trying to be wise with the molds and the tooling and how much I can fit into a tool, and so there's a lot of considerations for the final product. So injection mold is different than resin, is different than vinyl. So you have to consider all these things. And then I'm working with typically a 3D artist, and then I've done multiple paths. So I'm handing a lot of 2D off. I'm doing some fake 3D with like the way I'm drawing it, the way I'm doing technical drawing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm handing it to somebody, and then there are times, and I feel bad for the modeler on the other end, but I'm literally doing a call like this, where we're sharing a screen, and I'm doing work. I'm saying no, this, change this, and it's very much puppeteering to the chagrin of the other guy. But it's usually that's the fine tuning.
Yeah.
But usually, I mean, what people have to understand, the last 10% is as hard as the first 90. It's going to vary. It really comes with what is the project demand, and then from there we're getting together hand samples. I don't know how technical you want to go, but you're getting hand samples, paint samples, tooling masters. You're sending 3D to the factory, and then they're responding with 3D back. Sometimes it's just drawings. Ultimately, it's a counter sample, and then it's a production sample as the project evolves.
Yeah,
and ultimately to final product.
So, but that's kind of great. You guys are actually for the most part, assembling the prototypes right there. I mean, so you're doing like we'll just say it's a resin cast. So you're doing the clay sculpture, the silicone mold, the resin cast, the fabrication on site, and then the painting and finishing work from there. I mean, does that sound about right? Or
I'll say we've done all that.
Mm-hmm.
We're distributed now.
Oh.
So out of this office, we're doing a lot of the pre-design stuff. We're doing a lot of but my partners, right, are doing some of that work in Philadelphia, and they're handling more of the studio or pre-production work. So it's quote in-house, but it's different. And again, like it depends on the project. One of the things we're about to do is we're going to be doing more hand samples early. So I'm going to do micro runs of something. So because GoHero has immediate fans and my partners have fans, so we're going to be, as we're developing IP together, we're going to do 25 of just this for our fans.
Yeah,
our fans are going to get a version of this thing that's really a handmade piece of art.
Yeah.
But what it'll do is it sort of helps us do some market testing, solve some problems, but also it's a quick way to help fund the larger thing. But
Oh
it's a
yeah.
lot of like also just invite them into the process. You know,
Yeah.
I used to collect prototypes. You know, it's a great fun thing to have alongside the final product.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, I never even thought about like collecting, the prototypes. In that case, they're kind of more valuable, and kind of hell, they are more valuable than the actual piece because that's the first one, right?
It depends. It depends. I mean, there's it is. Why do they love it? Why does anybody love
Yeah.
anything? You know what I mean? So like some people will love it because it's the character. They'll love it because you touched it. They'll love it
Yeah.
because it's going to be valuable. You know, there's not a ton of people that do that. That like they're going on prototypes, but I think that's all valuable. It's all part of the history of it, and there's all, and really you want to invite, especially your closest people that really support you. You want to invite them in the process, and it's just another way to enjoy a project. Like
Mm-hmm.
come enjoy this with me. And the challenge is like when do you release that some of the stuff. We have some licenses that I can't quite do this with.
Yeah.
Original stuff's different. We have some licenses where we're not going to do that because we need these other things. But what we want to do is invite people into the process when it's ready, when we're ready for guests.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a funny business when that happens and how to do that well. And we've had more wins than losses in that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's for somebody like yourself you're the one problem solving and you're making one-off things. The transition from that to production it's not a small trend.
No.
Like, I don't
Yeah.
want to say anybody can make one thing. That's not true. But it's a big transition to I'm going to make this for the purpose of you're going to solve problems very, very differently.
Oh yeah.
Just undercutting, like designs that have undercuts,
Oh yeah.
pulling it out of a mold. I'm sure you know, like okay,
Yeah, they're the bane of anyone's
it's a
existence.
pain.
And that's kind of, that's the beauty of silicone. And like if I know that the undercut is really nasty, I'll just soften the silicone even more. Just a little bit of silicone dilution right there.
Yeah, yeah, that's smart.
It's just like it's called being a
Yeah, that's
lazy
smart.
artist. But yeah, it
Well,
works.
no. I would. I don't think that. I think your time is better spent elsewhere.
Yeah.
That's all. I mean, at the end of the day, I've seen if you knew you were going to do 7 of those, whatever you're going to cast, or 30,
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna plan differently.
Oh yeah.
You know, it's what you have to do in the moment with the requirements.
And it really is because, like, I mean, on my level, if I were to create an action figure in my studio, it is so much different because that production mold that I might produce will likely be
Mm,
silicone, and is only going to be able to put, if I'm lucky, 100 pieces out before it starts to give up the ghost. I looked into the manufacturing aspects
mm,
and the side where the Chinese manufacturers overseas and stuff. And what I learned was those steel molds that they create these things out of, are thousands of dollars by themselves, you know. And when I say molds, I mean a lot of people are thinking, oh, it's just it's a full body mold. No, it's not. It's like there's a mold for the legs. There's $3,000 to $5,000 if you're lucky. There's a mold for the arms, same thing. Torso, same thing. So in one mold, you've probably got almost
yeah.
$20,000 invested. And then what? How many do you have to order for something like a short run? Like 50,000
It
units
is.
or
Yeah, it is a huge math problem.
yeah.
And here's the thing, like it's much more complicated than people think, and they go up on Alibaba, and they think they're going to win, and it's difficult enough. You said Utah, and I'm just outside of
Mm-hmm.
Philadelphia. It's hard enough for us to connect and speak the same language. Like it's
Yeah.
hard enough
Yeah.
for like we both have beards, like
Well, we've got that down.
like there's things we're going to agree on and all that. But what happens is when you're across the world in another culture with another set of
Mm-hmm.
values, and there's not a tremendous amount of trust, where you have to build things on making a promise, keeping a promise,
Mm-hmm.
and it gets complex, and now you're dealing with $10,000, $20,000, $40,000, $100,000 for one project.
Yeah.
You need so much to be correct in that entire supply chain. That's really, honestly, it's the least fun thing to talk about, but it's the most serious thing the most serious thing I've done in the last several years
Mm-hmm.
is secure that supply chain end to end, and I mean all the way into the retailer space. So like the IP, IP comes in the front, all the way spits out product and retail and results, and all the way and feedback. Like that whole supply chain is the hardest part, and it is not fun for anybody.
Yeah.
But it is the most necessary thing. Otherwise, you're just. Here's the thing that I went through. Just so you know, like I have had some catastrophes for production because I've trusted the wrong people, or the trust changed to the leverage shifted, and all of a sudden I thought a good thing turned into a bad thing. And the thing I love, and here's the thing, we indie guys do it because we love it. We don't sit there and go, "Hey, honey, I'm gonna pay the mortgage." Like we think we could do that, but there's 10,000 like battles to be fought before that's even possible. So, and it starts with a thing I loved. Like this thing I love, I'm gonna put through this gauntlet. When it starts to get attacked by price and process and the reduction of things and your original vision, man, it has to withstand so much.
Oh, it does.
Or else, honestly, I just tell people don't do it. Go make one. Go hire a guy like you and go make one and put it on your desk.
I mean, so the one on your end with those die cut molds and things like that, you know, is so many thousands of dollars. On my end, I mean, I don't think that they grasp that it's much less expensive, but equally pricey in a way. Whereas, like, I think I could probably pull one off for like, you know, $5,000 to $6,000, where you're going to be doing one, it's going to be tens of thousands of dollars because of all the tooling involved, you know. Oh, and then there's the aspect which I'm sure is the bane of your existence. If you do not order another run in X amount of time, those molds gets trashed, and then you have to go through the mold making process again with them because, you know, you waited too long and they've I want to say recycled, but I'm sure that they have been sent off for use elsewhere, bootleg or whatever, you know.
Well, yeah, you touched on a couple of things. One is, let me work backwards. The mold, you can secure your mold, and you can secure your mold and have it secured, have it held. But where are you storing giant blocks of metal? Like, then you got to make another arrangement. So you have to have a relationship in order. You have them shipped here. But like, this is true. There are molds from like Captain Action Ideal from the '60s that are like sitting someplace in Mexico right now. And I know this because we're doing a Captain Action project. So like, those molds some of them got recycled. And nowadays, they're if you don't do that process, the assumption is what you said, which is they're gonna maybe run some other things through it. I know a guy who comes and just buys a bunch of old molds up, and
he
just accumulates old molds, and now he's got them. I know. And but coming back to something you said a moment ago, you're dealing with something that's different. It's very different than what I'm doing, which is somebody that hires you to make a special effect. There's a question that is part of your process that's not part of mine, which is how long does it have to last?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, if this is rubber, does it have to last one scene? Or does it have to last? I have to build things that people expect to last. They expect it to last forever.
Oh, yeah.
But it is an oil product. It will break down. There are ways in which it breaks down sooner rather than later. There's amazing designer Japanese vinyl that's still around and amazing. It still like leaks. It still like leaches.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Oils and stuff, like chemicals, and you're like, that's probably not good for the kids. But and then there's other stuff they make today that falls apart. And it's a materials question. What you want to make this product, and I get this is an actual question I engage in. What's the quality you want, especially for like scale figures? Well, what's the quality you want? You want this, or this? And the highest level stuff is sometimes that has the most fidelity and the latest technology. The mid level sometimes is more durable. So it's a really funky equation because I need something that's going to last for. And I've asked questions. I've worked with some really, really cutting edge folks. And technologies, and like I had to ask a guy once, like, how long will this material that you're using on this last? And it's like 2 years, 2 years for this, 10 years on the outside. But we kind of know it's so new that nobody knows.
Yeah,
like nobody knows. you can't make a guarantee. So what that does is, should you not make it? No, you have to make it, but you can't warranty it.
Yeah.
So what do you got to build? You got to build a plan around that, because nobody likes to. But I got a buddy who's got a huge collection that sits in like not a warehouse, but a storage unit, and I go, is that temperature controlled?
Oh.
You know what I mean? Like, because one day you're gonna walk in there and you're gonna go, finally, I'm ready to open my Ed 209, and I open it up and it's like dust.
Yeah.
Difficult business.
Down the path of the darker or more hair pulling side of the business, what's the process of trying to land a licensing agreement to be able to reproduce something?
Yeah. So it varies, like everything. Depends on the brand you're trying to get. I didn't know I was doing this when I started this. I've only really recently put together that I have a mission in what I do. Like, I'm trying to like elevate and celebrate and educate all in what I do. And I didn't know I was doing that. It's different depending on who you're trying to get to. So I have had a lot of experiences. Some of them are me cold calling people. I Google them, I find them. I've got dozens of stories. I'll give you one, which is I was going to do Buster Crabbe as Flash Gordon from the 1930s. So I have a thing where I want to go back to history and go, this was an original, this is a first ever. So a lot of the projects that I've touched are first ever stuff. Like, no one's ever done it this way and done a really high fidelity treatment of it or at all. So we've licensed things that were never licensed up to that moment. And some of my partners have done that as well. So I found the guy that played Ming the Merciless, his grandson, and I found the guy, and I just found him, and it took 10 minutes, and I called the guy up and I said, "Hi, are you the grandson of this actor, Charles Middleton?" And he goes, "How'd you get this number?" I'm like, "Well, here's what I did 10 minutes ago. I started searching on you." And he goes, "I don't like anybody I don't trust the government. I don't trust people trying to get a hold of me." And I said, "I'm sorry. You're on the internet. That's how the internet works. Well, what do you want?" "I want to do a figure that honors your granddad." "Okay, send me the paperwork." Like, it was done.
Wow.
And it was done. And other things were negotiations. I deal with a lot of weird stuff. So, like, they don't know what they have. They don't know how to do business. They're just people. Yeah. And I come in there, and my job is to honor the project we're doing, the person we're talking to, the rights holder, to do it professionally, to do it in a way that makes them understand their value. Because some of them are like, "Well, is this going to be like $1 million deal?" And I'm like, no. They don't know their own value. They don't understand the value, and they're not doing work to like collect the community. They just know this. Their granddad did this thing one time. Whereas we're working with a very big studio, and I can't say who it is, and it's been 2 years.
Yeah.
And it's not because it's 2 years because they're a huge aircraft carrier, and we're this little speedboat that's like, we're like, "We're ready when you are, guys," and it's like, "We're gonna get to you. We're doing some things already."
Yeah.
So and we're trying to get in, and not, I don't want to say displace other people, but when you're depending on the license, some of these places, they don't want to do what's called licensing. You get a license, and you get a license, and you get a license, and everybody gets a license, and they've cannibalized themselves. So it's a lot of different stories. You've got to earn the right, and you have to have a body of work to do it. And enough people gave us a chance early on, and we're grateful. I was mentioning Flint earlier. We're grateful. I mean, when we did that project, we had some challenges with the factory and delays, and it was a success. We won Toy of the Year from the industry. Like, first time out doing a 1/6 scale figure, and I won Toy of the Year. And it was the second time I'd won a Toy of the Year kind of thing. And it was a real validation, but like, it was a financial difficult project. Like, it took us a long time to like get our feet underneath us, just because it was just a lot went on.
Yeah.
And that license, but I ended up running their Buck Rogers brand for a time. That's how Gil and I really got to know each other, because the rights holders really loved what we did.
Yeah.
So it's like, there's just relationships out there. If you come in there and you're transactional, then it's just a transaction.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's perfect. And other times it's like, I want to do something for you, rights holder, and here I'm going to demonstrate what that is.
When we're talking about like doing another IP, clearly you have to make the intellectual property owner happy with the design. What about, and this is where I'm afraid, like we're talking about Gil. Well, we're not talking about Gil, but we were just talking about Gil. You know, the living actor that represented that character, are you equally indebted? Not indebted is probably not the word. Are you, yeah, we'll just say indebted to making that likeness, making
Sure.
them happy with the likeness as well as the IP owner?
Gil would be a good example of that. So I don't think there's been a figure that's a production figure that I would say probably made him happy. Like the Mego one, this is famously the zombified one. You know, where the head's all big and then all the UV light messed it up.
Yeah.
The sculpt I don't think looks like him. The funny thing is that, like, the small Mego one, if you squint your eyes, is probably the closest. There was one that I helped with a number of years ago, like a 9-inch figure, and it was well done. But the final thing got to, in my opinion, although I'm proud of a lot of my contribution, the final thing, there was a distortion there. So
There was a distortion.
what happens when there's a guy? Well, the final like in the production process, there's shrinkage. Things shrink. Things change. The eyes go from being normal to being like, now they're a little too close together.
That kind of
whoever's
shrinkage.
doing the final
Okay.
paint. So there's just challenges. So
Yeah.
to answer your question, we should cut this whole section out, by the way. To answer your question, is like if you have the rights for the IP,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't need the likeness rights, then you're gonna try and deal with as few people as possible.
Yeah.
That is a genuine, real philosophy. And if you're there to honor the whole project, you're going to want as many people to in on that. It's a business balance, because you sit there and you go, can that guy hang up my project because I'm $100,000 at risk, and I'm on a time. I wrote my first check and I'm waiting for the boomerang where I throw a bunch of money out and I hope it comes back and doesn't just fly
Mm-hmm.
away. Do you bring that person in? The other side, we've gone directly to the actors, for example, and just made deals with them and didn't need anything from the movies or whatever, or the studios, right? So there are some times where the rights are interesting, or who owns them. It's my position that whenever possible, which is most of the time, if there's a living actor involved, I want that person involved. I want them to see it and be honored, because I'm actually not doing this for the projects I do anyway. I'm not doing this because I want to make a buck. I actually want them to be honored, and I want them to go. I'm trying to give them something, like a thank you.
Mm-hmm.
It's a thank you. Like, you did something in my childhood, we were talking about earlier. You did something for me that made me go, wow, you were one of the pantheon of people I thought was cool. So I want to honor you, and I want you to not have any reservation about that when you see the product. And I'll say, without trying to get myself in trouble, like, I don't think Funko Pops are doing that. I don't think so. In fact, I would argue that they're totally. In fact, if you go and ask the actors, and some of them are still posting about it, and I've tried to help get some of these legacy actors ambassador deals, which is like, you can't screw up the licensing arrangement, but you can say, that guy's alive. This actress is alive. You want them saying good things for you out there in the world. Why can't you give them a piece now of this? And that's successfully happened. There are people, I can't name names, but it's successfully worked where there's been a deal constructed where they can make money today when they didn't make money back then, because of who owns what and when, and where how that money moves. But that's it's all about honoring in my mind. I just want those guys to feel like, I want them to feel the financial benefit and the process benefit if they want it. Some of them want nothing to do with it. Some of them are like, I got screwed. you're screwing me too, and then you can't even have the conversation.
Yeah.
Other people are just grateful. And they love that you're trying.
Oh yeah, I can see that. Yeah, if if you had to give some advice to somebody coming into the industry, kind of like a hack to get their foot in the door, what kind of advice would you give them as an artist, not necessarily as a business person?
Yeah, it's good. It's a good question. Well, um, let me preload my Let me give you the prologue to the answer. The answer is I am a sensitive, gooey center of an artist inside, who's had to have the hard, nutty exterior of 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 a business person and develop all that crunchy shell, because the artist is in the industry is seriously, they're fungible. I don't know how to say it another
Yeah.
way. It's the worst thing I can tell anybody. AI just did a sense. It's not cool.
Yeah.
It's wrong. What was done, the way it was done. But there's but it what it demonstrates is how people want to transact on art, what they need art for. So it's a very it's almost like I can't separate those two answers from what should an artist do if he's naive and wants to go out there and feel vulnerable in front of a bunch of wolves.
Yeah.
It's a business answer.
Yeah.
So that's why I got to say it that way. So I'll do my best. So a lot of times I'm dealing with somebody and they want to claim the name artist, and they're not an artist, they're a crafts person. And there are craft people who are out of necessity doing craft, but they're secretly it isn't what inspires them. They made one time. They would rather move on, but they're actually going to just keep making this because it has some problems. So it's a weird map. I map things differently than most. For independent toy makers, get the idea out of your head. Measure your risks. I've seen some people go buy into the idea that they're really unique and special, and risk a bunch of things, and it has really done damage to themselves, their families, their vision, because as they're going and forging a path and like bleeding and sacrificing and doing all this stuff, another person goes in and they take the idea because they've already got a following, because they're and now the question becomes, oh, I'm a failure. They stole my idea. Was that your fail, or did you get your idea out? So like
Yeah.
knowing what you're there to do matters.
Yeah.
And knowing how to risk what you're willing to risk matters. And if you got your idea and your vision out, you can have achieved goal number one. I want more people to not conflate goal number one with goal number two, that they want to be in the toy business. Don't come in the toy business. Like, don't do it if you think your idea is going to somehow change the world.
Mm-hmm.
Do the idea, but don't put on the toy industry or any industry that they have to accept your idea. Like, do the work,
Mm-hmm.
and then take that. Now that it's out, it's in the marketplace in some way, and now you have to literally sit there and go, okay, son, okay, buddy boy, I'm going to now help you learn how to stand on your own. And it's an entirely different exercise from birthing that idea. You know what I mean? And they're just two different functions, and they are both exhausting and can be really difficult. Sometimes it's easy. Like I'm with Let's Be Onyx, LBO Collective right now. Creative ideas are easy. We have every Monday we meet for 3 hours, and we come up with the craziest stuff. And we are all old enough and sort of seasoned to go, we know why that will work. That we know why that will work, and where it will work, and how it will work, and who it will work for. Like, we have all that equation now, and it's easy. But that's like, in some sense there's real art happening, in another sense it's a different process happening.
Yeah. As much as this is your dream, you got to understand that there's some aspects of it that's going to be soul crushing, that's going to challenge you in ways that you may not be prepared for, and ruin the entire thing for you. The one thing I wanted to do as a child and into my adulthood was become a special effects artist. And if I knew then what I knew now, I would have done something completely different. Like, this is not a career
Mm.
where you're going to be a superstar. There are very few superstars in the special effects world, and guys who think that they could just come in and sculpt. Sculptors are a dime a dozen, man. I mean, if that's your
Mm.
shtick,
Mm.
you need to learn how to make a mold, because that's the job nobody wants to do in most cases, and it's
Mm.
the least celebrated,
Mhm.
but it's the one that's
Mhm.
going to get you the most work. I mean, people they don't want to hear that shit.
Mm.
So you being
No, they don't.
truthful about that is important. These are the soul crushing aspects of what you're about to get into, and if you're okay with that, then definitely give it a shot. Other than that, be warned.
Yeah, well, the fragile artist has to get really thick-skinned
Yeah.
by divorce. And it's an internal process. They have to take the idea out, and it must live outside them. And that getting good at that process is a maturing thing. These are the things I hold sacred that are on my mission, my personal mission as an artist. Everything else is for sale.
Yeah.
Me and my partners, we do coaching for artists. We do coaching for mentoring. There's some guys that are out doing amazing work right now that we've helped them work through these thoughts. So I have a presentation we go through with guys, and I show them like the Zelda map, where I'm like, this is the treasure. There's a dragon over here in the water, and if you go in this little cave, there's a guy with a sword. Like, this is what you can do to survive and succeed. And so we help these guys. We've been doing it independently, but now we're organizing it, and we do it as a service in different capacities. And then what we're doing is we can connect an artist with a brand, and the brand is going to be, it could be anything. It could be a very high studio brand. It could be an independent musical band, for example. It could be whatever. And maybe the artist goes, "Boy, I wish I could do this license," and we may have that relationship. Sometimes the retailers have the license already, so they just need great designs and great ideas. So we're strung all that together, and we've started to roll that out as a service, a consultation service, but also it's more trying to create the connective tissue so guys like probably that you're talking to aren't in the wilderness anymore. Like, we're trying to protect artists, protect creative vision, and offer these guys coaching, mentorship, and really what it is it's like fractional CEO work.
Mm-hmm.
Like, 4 CEOs are all available to guide
Oh,
somebody
that's great.
so that they focus on what they're good at. And if they want to learn business, they're going to learn business. If they want to go, just send me great opportunities, then that's available too. So that's I'm telling you that we've been doing that as a private organized effort. We're probably going to release it in more of a public way sort of later this year. So anyway, that's the scope, big scope. But I'm really excited about it because it's part of the missional work that we're doing. Help underrepresented artists get their opportunity. Underrepresented characters, creations, and culture.
Mm-hmm. There are some aspects, and if we would just take art and all that stuff and we just mash it into creatives, right? Creatives like don't seem to,
Mm-hmm.
like, even me, I know nothing about marketing. I wish I did. It's an animal that I have never been able to capture, you know, even the social media aspect. It doesn't matter. There are aspects of selling yourself, are just things that a lot of creatives don't have. They're
Mm.
tools that are just not in the kit, and we don't know where to get them. So, having
Yeah, yeah.
people out there whose mission is to supply that, is incredible. So,
Yeah, well, and the difference between what we're trying to do and like a classic like agency model is if you've got IP, that's your IP.
mhm.
If you want to do a service job, do a service job. An agent is gonna and then if you need support on engineering and production and blah blah blah, you can do 50% of it, but we need the other 50% someplace else. We can align that together in a way that is fair for everybody else. Like, we're not sitting there like it's not a classic agent model. It's a very different model that because we're working with some folks who are the secret sauce in some very serious companies. Like, you see like this company puts out this product and they make millions of dollars, and that guy or gal or whatever makes a fraction of their entire design, the thing they brought to the table. Go read about Sanrio and like Hello Kitty, and those things that's the common story.
Yeah.
We're trying to enable those folks to have their own piece of their own pie and share it on their own terms. So that's a very different model. I've never seen it. That's why we made it.
Yeah. No, and it's amazing. So, do you guys have any links associated with that now that you can pop up, and
just letsbeonyx.com will get you to our site. GoHero.com will get you to our site. If people are interested, they can reach out. And we have to vet it all. I mean, we sort of have a clearinghouse for it, for who's right for what. And there's a lot of people that are just in different stages of maturity in their business. Like some people are super talented and not mature enough in their business.
Yeah.
And you have other people who are immature creatively, but they've got a huge following. So who's right for what is a question that we have to sort through.
Gotcha.
But understood about marketing. Yeah, I get the marketing aspect,
finance,
and that gets back to the mission stuff. Like, yeah, it's hard. I mean, and then if you're a creative, you either need to develop that internally or you're going to outsource that. And there's just pick your poison. Like, it's always a pain.
Yeah.
What kind of pain do you? How do you not want to suffer?
Exactly. In terms of like the GoHero, is there anything coming out that we should be watching for?
So for GoHero, we have a number of original IP projects that we've had in development for a while. We started launching one at a time where the environment, like the industry or the market took a dive. So we took a step back. We've been sort of developing our roots, getting our roots down with this other opportunity with LBO. And so what we're about to announce that I can't announce here with regards to Captain Action and licenses and new projects and new licenses and original IP for LBO and for GoHero, we're in the trenches, like the Death Star trench run towards San Diego Comic-Con now. So like and the scope is just 10 times larger than I've ever had a scope. Forgotten Future is about to we're about to show some things on that scope and on that project that I'm going to announce at San Diego. We have some major licenses with LBO and Captain Action that's going to happen at San Diego and maybe leading up to that. We have some original IP that we've developed as GoHero with Kwame and House of Hanzo that we're about under LBO, that we're about to announce at San Diego. So we're working up to a big explosive thing, and we're bringing in our agency side to all this. So we're about to do a whole entertainment thing, which I guess is a scoop. There's an entire entertainment side to what we're about to do with video, content, a whole other animal where it's not just brands that are cool toys, but it's actually licenses and original mashed into original content on multiple platforms.
Oh, fantastic.
So it's a whole thing.
Awesome.
So I thank you, man. This has been great. Just honestly getting to know you, and
thanks for coming.
I love the work back there.
Oh, thanks. Speaking of puppets, but yeah, it's awesome. Been great. I really appreciate you coming on and talking about your industry. All this stuff is just helpful to people looking to get in any aspect. I'd like to thank Steve for coming by this week and sharing a little bit of insight into his industry. I would like to thank our friends over at the Collector's Maze Network, and as always, Gil Corzo for supplying us with our theme music. This episode was recorded on Riverside FM and edited on DaVinci Resolve.